Most men spend their entire lives trapped by invisible chains. Not chains made of iron, not chains made of money, but chains made of other people's opinions. What will they think? Will they approve? Will they judge me? Will they accept me? For decades, these questions quietly control a man's decisions. But something remarkable happens to many men after 60. They stop caring. Not because they become bitter, not because they give up, but because they finally discover a truth that changes everything. And once they see it, there is no going back. In the field of developmental psychology, human beings spend the first half of their lives engaged in social conditioning. We learn to adapt, to conform, and to seek the approval of the tribe to ensure our survival. But the second half of a man's life is meant for something much higher. It is meant for psychological liberation. Today we are going to explore the psychology of the sovereign man. We will dissect the 7 profound reasons why older men permanently sever the chains of societal expectation, and why achieving this state of mind is the ultimate pinnacle of masculine maturity. Let us uncover the truth. Point number 1. They realize most people aren't thinking about them at all. In psychology, there is a well-documented cognitive bias known as the spotlight effect. When we are young, we suffer from the persistent illusion that we are the main character in everyone else's story. We imagine everyone is constantly watching, judging, comparing, criticizing. But age reveals something incredibly surprising. Most people are entirely too busy worrying about their own lives, their bills, their problems, their insecurities. The audience you feared for decades was never paying as much attention as you thought. Think of a practical example. A man might spend hours agonizing over the car he drives, fearing his neighbors will judge him for not having a newer model. The older man realizes the neighbor does not care about the car. The neighbor is only worrying about whether his own lawn looks presentable. When a senior man deeply internalizes this psychological truth, it is incredibly liberating. The heavy, suffocating pressure to perform simply vanishes. He realizes he has been performing in an empty theater for 50 years, and so he finally walks off the stage to live his actual life. Point number 2. They have already survived other people's judgments. When you are 20 years old, the threat of social rejection feels like a death sentence. You have no empirical evidence to prove that you can survive being ostracized, criticized, or misunderstood. But an older man is a veteran of reality. He has been criticized before. He was judged for his career choices. He was judged for his marriages, and perhaps his divorces, for his parenting, for his failures, and paradoxically, for his successes. No matter what he did, somebody, somewhere, always had an opinion. But what is the profound realization? He realizes that the judgments did not kill him. The gossip did not stop his heart from beating. The criticism did not empty his bank account. Through sheer exposure, he has developed emotional immunity. He has built a psychological callus. Eventually, he learns a powerful, unshakable lesson. If people are going to judge you anyway, no matter what you do, you might as well live your own life. The fear of judgment loses its venom once a man realizes he has already survived the bite. Point number 3, they completely stop competing. For decades, life can feel like an aggressive, endless competition. Evolutionary psychology hardwires young men to compete for resources, mates, and tribal status. This biological drive is hijacked by modern society, turning a man's life into a perpetual race. Who earns more? Who owns more? Who looks better? Who has higher status? A man in his 30s might sacrifice his health and his weekends just to ensure his house is larger than his brother's, or his title is more prestigious than his college roommates. He believes that winning this competition will finally bring him peace. But many older men eventually step off the treadmill. They realize that the game is rigged. The finish line is a mirage that constantly moves further away. They look around and realize that the men who won the competition are often the most miserable, stressed, and divorced men in the room. And so, the senior man makes a radical decision. He stops comparing. He stops competing. He stops caring if a neighbor buys a luxury car because he knows the neighbor is drowning in the stress of the monthly payment. He finds satisfaction in what he already possesses. And for the first time in his entire life, he experiences genuine, unadulterated peace. Point number 4. They learn that pleasing everyone is mathematically impossible. One of life's hardest psychological lessons is also one of its simplest. In our youth, we suffer from the disease to please. We operate under the delusion that if we just act perfectly, speak perfectly, and give enough of ourselves, we can achieve universal approval. But the older man discovers the paradox of human nature. You cannot please everyone, because the world's demands are fundamentally contradictory. If you are strong and assertive, someone will call you arrogant. If you are kind and accommodating, someone will call you weak. If you are successful, someone will deeply resent you. If you are struggling, someone will judge you as lazy. There is no version of a man's life that escapes the criticism of the crowd. Older men finally understand that trying to satisfy everyone is a battle that can never be won. It is a psychological trap designed to keep you exhausted. Once a man realizes that disapproval is a guaranteed feature of life, and not a bug, he stops trying to avoid it. He stops editing his personality. He stops biting his tongue. He realizes that if he is going to be villainized by someone regardless of what he does, he might as well be the author of his own actions. Point number 5. They become profoundly comfortable with who they are. In the psychology of Carl Jung, the first half of a man's life is spent building a persona, a mask we wear to interact with society and hide our flaws. We spend enormous amounts of energy pretending to be smarter, braver, and more flawless than we actually are. But age brings the ultimate gift: deep, unapologetic self-knowledge. The process of individuation occurs. Older men know their strengths. They know their exact weaknesses. They know their temperaments, their limitations, and their past mistakes. And most importantly, they have forgiven themselves for them. Because they know themselves so intimately, they depend far less on outside validation. If a stranger insults a young man, the young man is devastated because he is still unsure of who he is. But if a stranger insults an older man, it bounces off. Why? Because the older man knows the stranger lacks the data. Confidence in your senior years no longer comes from the applause of the crowd. It does not come from the validation of women or the praise of a boss. It comes from deep, quiet self-respect. He has lived with himself for 60 years. He knows his own character, and society's opinion of it is entirely irrelevant. Point number 6. They fiercely protect their peace. This may be the biggest, most biologically driven reason of all. We must look at the physical reality of aging. The human nervous system, after decades of absorbing the shockwaves of life, reaches a state of sensory fatigue. Allostatic load, the physiological wear and tear on the body caused by chronic stress, makes conflict physically intolerable. Older men discover that peace is not just a preference, it is priceless, it is medical, it is survival. Because peace is so highly valued, they become incredibly careful about who is allowed to disturb it. Consider a practical example. A family dinner where a relative tries to bait the older man into a heated political argument. A younger man would take the bait, raise his voice, and spend the next 2 hours defending his ego, spiking his blood pressure in the process. The older man avoids unnecessary arguments. He avoids dramatic relationships. He avoids people who constantly create conflict. He stops caring about winning the argument because he knows that engaging with a fool makes you a fool. He does not walk away because he is afraid or because he lacks the intellect to debate. He walks away because his inner peace is a multi-million-dollar estate, and he refuses to let anyone track mud into his living room. Point number 7, and the ultimate realization. They understand how terrifyingly short life really is. Youth creates the dangerous psychological illusion of endless time. When a man is 20, he thinks he has an infinite supply of tomorrows. Because time feels cheap, he is willing to spend it worrying about the opinions of strangers. He is willing to spend months agonizing over a social faux pas. Age removes that illusion. The Stoic philosophy of memento mori, remember that you must die, becomes a lived reality. The mathematical truth of existence comes into sharp focus. If he is fortunate, he has perhaps 15 or 20 healthy summers left. Faced with this ticking clock, many older men begin asking themselves brutally honest, difficult questions. Why am I still trying to impress people who do not truly care about me? Why am I seeking approval from strangers I will never meet again? Why am I living according to someone else's expectations when it is my clock that is running out? And the answers to these questions always lead to absolute freedom. When you realize that your time is the most precious, non-renewable resource in the universe, the opinions of other people instantly become utterly worthless. He stops caring what people think, because he is too busy actually living his final, most beautiful chapters. To the younger men watching this, observe the sovereign man. Do not wait until you are 60 years old to cut the invisible chains. The opinions of the crowd are a prison with no locks. You can choose to walk out the door today. And to the older men watching this, the ones who have stepped off the treadmill, the ones who have stopped performing, the ones who guard their peace fiercely, you have finally won the game. Never let society shame you for discovering the freedom they are still desperately searching for. If this video resonated with your journey, I want to hear your truth. Head down to the comments and tell me, at what exact age did you finally stop caring what other people thought? What was the breaking point that set you free? Your scars and your wisdom will help guide the younger men who are still fighting blindly through the storm. If you found value in this deep dive into male psychology, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a lesson. Thank you for watching. Until next time, guard your sanctuary and live on your own terms.